Something happened to me, and to this day I can't explain it. My name is Father Lucas Mendez. I am 29 years old, and perhaps I should never have accepted this mission. When I received the letter from the Vatican, I thought it was a mistake. I was too young, too inexperienced. I had been ordained only 3 years before, and I had spent most of that time attending Mass, organizing files, and trying to figure out if I really belonged in that world. My mentor, Father Augusto, used to say that vocation isn't something you find. It's something that finds you. He died 6 months before the letter arrived. Sudden heart attack, alone, in the sacristy. I found the body. Since then, I haven't been able to pray properly anymore. The words came out empty, as if I were talking to myself. But the letter was clear. I was to take up a temporary post at the Basilica of San Sebastiano, within the Vatican walls. A smaller building, away from the main tourist routes, a discreet place, forgotten. Administrative and liturgical responsibilities, the official text stated. Nothing special, just filling a void. I arrived on a gray October afternoon. The air was heavy, laden with dampness. The basilica was beautiful, but sad. Light stone walls, dusty stained glass windows, empty pews, absolute silence. I was greeted by Donna Irene, the caretaker. Italian, with white hair tied in a tight bun, deep-set and attentive eyes. She didn't smile. "Father Lucas?" His voice was dry, almost suspicious. "Yes, it's a pleasure." "Nice to meet you," she interrupted, as if the word had no meaning there. "Come. I'll show you where you'll be sleeping." He led me through the narrow corridors to a small room at the back. A simple bed, a crucifix on the wall, a window overlooking the inner garden. Everything very austere, very quiet. "Mass is at 7 in the morning. Hardly anyone comes," she said, adjusting the bedspread with mechanical movements. "Confessions, if there are any, are on Tuesdays and Thursdays, but it's rare." "I understand." She stopped. She looked at me with a strange intensity. Father Augusto was his mentor, wasn't he? I swallowed hard. "Ira, he was a good man," she sighed. "You're going to need to be strong here." I didn't understand what she meant. But before I could ask, she was already leaving. "Oh, Father." She stopped at the door, without turning around. "There's a confessional in the left side aisle, covered with a black cloth. Don't remove the cloth. Don't open the door. Ever." I felt a chill run up the back of my neck. Why? Because there are things that God has locked away out of mercy, and He left. I spent the first few days trying to get used to it. The basilica was bigger than it seemed. Corridors leading to side chapels, staircases descending to ancient crypts, locked doors without plaques. The masses were empty, sometimes 2 or 3 worshippers, elderly people, lost tourists. Nobody stayed very long. I was celebrating, but my mind was elsewhere. I was thinking about Father Augusto, about his expression when I met him. Eyes wide open, as if he had seen something. At night, I reviewed the basilica's records. Old, dusty books with irregular handwriting, baptisms, marriages, deaths, nothing extraordinary. But always, in the corner of the left side aisle, covered by that black cloth, was the confessional. I passed by it every day, and every day I felt something strange. It wasn't fear, it was curiosity, as if something was calling to me. I asked Donna Irene about him. "How long has it been sealed?" "I don't know. It was like this when I arrived, 30 years ago. And nobody ever asked?" She looked at me with a hard expression. "Those who asked didn't stay here very long." I didn't insist. But at night, alone in my room, I thought about it. I thought about her words. There are things that God has locked away out of mercy. What could be inside that would justify so much fear? I tried to pray, but the words remained empty. And then, on a Thursday, I heard it. It was low, muffled, as if it came from very far away. Tuck, 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 3 knocks, slow, deliberate, coming from the direction of the confessional. I was lying down when I heard it. It wasn't sleep. I was sure of that. I was awake, staring at the ceiling, trying to push away thoughts about Father Augusto, about the vocation that never seemed solid enough. And then, tuck, 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 3 beats, paused, very clear. I sat up in bed. My heart raced. I lay still, breathing slowly, trying to hear again. Silence. Maybe it was the pipes. The basilica was old. Old structures make noise. I knew that. I lay down again. I closed my eyes. Tuck, tuck, tuck. This time, higher. I jumped up. I put on my shoes without thinking, donned my cassock over my pajamas, and left the room. The hallway was shrouded in shadows. Only a faint light emanated from the main nave. I walked slowly, trying to locate the source of the sound. My footsteps echoed in the silence. Each breath seemed too loud. I arrived at the left side aisle. The confessional was there, covered by the black cloth, immobile. I stood a few meters away, watching. Nothing moved, nothing breathed, but I felt something was wrong. It wasn't fear, yet it was discomfort. Like when you know someone is watching you, but you can't see who. I approached, slowly. Each step seemed to weigh more. I reached out my hand, and when my fingers were inches from the fabric, the sound stopped. Completely. As if whatever was knocking had sensed my presence. I stepped back, quickly, breathing heavily. I looked around. Nothing. Nobody. I ran back to the room. I locked the door. I sat on the bed. My hands were trembling. That's ridiculous, Lucas. You're tired. You're grieving. That's all. I tried to pray, and Our Father, but my mind couldn't focus. The words came out automatically, without weight. Eventually, sleep came, heavy, restless, and I dreamed. In the dream, I was standing in front of the confessional. The black cloth had disappeared. The wooden door was ajar, dark, empty. But I heard a voice, low, hoarse, as if it came from very far away. Lucas, my name, said slowly, almost affectionately. Lucas, please. I wanted to go out. I wanted to wake up. But my feet wouldn't move. The voice continued. Listen to me, please. Listen to me. And then I woke up. In the following days, the sound returned, always at night, always coming from the same direction. Tock, tock, tock. I tried to ignore it. I put the pillow over my head. I prayed aloud, but nothing worked. During the day, I was exhausted. The masses were a blur. I celebrated on autopilot. Donna Irene looked at me with growing suspicion. Are you all right, Father? I am just tired. Is he sleeping? More or less. She didn't say anything, but her gaze said it all. I warned you. I started researching. I went through the basilica's archives. I looked for any mention of the confessional, any record of when it was sealed, why, by whom. And finally, I found it. An old book, bound in worn leather. Administrative records from 1887. There was a handwritten note, in faded ink. By order of His Eminence, Bishop Domenico Valente, the confessional in the left side aisle must be permanently sealed. No priest should open it, no faithful should approach it, under penalty of immediate excommunication. Below, a single word scribbled, almost illegible. Elias. I'll turn the page. More notes, fragments. Father Elias Correa confessed to crimes against the faith. He cannot be absolved. He refused to recant. He was confined for penance. And then, the last line, "May God have mercy on his soul. We cannot." I closed the book. My hands were trembling.
They locked a man in there, a priest, and left him to die. That night, the sound returned, but this time, it was different. They weren't knocks. It was a voice, muffled, distant, but unmistakable. "Listen to me." I sat up in bed. My heart was racing. "Please, listen to me." The voice was coming from the confessional. I was sure of it. "Lucas, listen to me." He knew my name. I didn't sleep that night.
I sat on the bed, my back against the wall, staring at the locked door as if it could protect me from something. The voice had stopped, but the silence that followed was worse, heavy, expectant, as if something was waiting for my answer. When the sun rose, I left my room, my eyes burning with exhaustion. I went straight to the sacristy. I needed answers. I needed to understand what was happening to me. Donna Irene was cleaning the candlesticks. When she saw me, she stopped. She looked at me with that stern expression. But there was something different now. Worry. "You heard, didn't you? I didn't deny it." "What is this, Mrs. Irene?" She sighed. She placed the cloth on the table and sat down, as if carrying that weight were a physical task. "Father Elias Correa." His voice was low, almost a whisper. "He served here at the end of the 19th century. They say he was brilliant, eloquent, beloved by the community." What happened? He began making strange confessions. He said he heard voices, that God spoke to him in ways that no one else could understand. He began preaching things that contradicted doctrine, heresies. She paused. The Vatican tried to correct him, but he refused to recant. He said he was doing God's will, that everyone else was blind. And then, Donna Irene looked at her own hands. They locked him in the confessional, as penance, so that he would reflect. But he never came out. I felt a shiver run down my spine. How long was he there? I don't know. The records were burned, but they say that, when they finally opened them, there was no body, only footprints. Footprints that led from the confessional to the altar, and then they disappeared. She stood up, avoiding my gaze. "That's why it's sealed, Father Lucas. It's not just old wood. It's a tomb, and some tombs shouldn't be opened." I spent the day trying to process it, trying to find a rational explanation. Perhaps it was exhaustion, unresolved grief, psychological projection. But at night, when the sound returned, I knew it wasn't my imagination. Tuck, tuck, tuck. And then, "Lucas, please, listen to me." The voice was clear now, desperate, human. I've been stuck for so long. I stood up, not out of courage, for something deeper, something that every priest carries, even the doubtful ones like me, compassion. If there was a suffering soul there, I couldn't simply ignore it. I went down to the side aisle. The confessional was there, covered, immobile. I stopped in front of him, taking a deep breath. "If there's anyone there," my voice came out trembling, "I can help, but I need you to show me it's real." Silence, and then talk. A single beat, coming from within. I reached out my hand. I pulled the black cloth. The wood was dark and stained. There were deep scratches on the door, like fingernails. My stomach churned. My God. I pulled the doorknob. It was stiff, rusty, but it gave way. The door opened with a low creak. Inside, empty, completely empty. Just dust, cobwebs, rotten wood. But the air was freezing. as if a draft was blowing from inside, but there were no windows. There was no way out. And then I saw, on the dusty floor of the confessional, footprints of bare feet, coming from the countryside, walking outside. I followed with my eyes. They crossed the nave floor. They passed between the pews. They climbed the steps to the altar. And there, they disappeared, as if whoever left them had simply evaporated. I stepped back. My hands were trembling, and that's when I felt it. A presence behind me. Gray. Nothing. But the air was different now. Heavier, as if something had awakened. I ran back to the room. I locked the door. I pushed the dresser against it. I sat on the floor, my back against the wall, hugging my knees. What have I done? My God, what have I done? And then, very quietly, coming from somewhere inside the basilica, I heard footsteps, boards, dragged, coming towards me. The footsteps stopped in front of my door. I was huddled on the floor, my hand over my mouth to stifle my breath. My heart was pounding so hard it hurt in my chest. Silence. And then, a knock, soft, almost gentle. Lucas. The voice was low, hoarse, as if it hadn't been used in a long time. Why did you open it? I closed my eyes tightly. This isn't real. It can't be real. I've been waiting for so long. Another beat. Louder. Tock. Please, let me in. Go away. My voice came out weak, broken. Whatever you are. Go away. Silence. And then, laughter. Low, humorless. As if something were trying to remember how to laugh. The footsteps receded, slowly, dragging, until they disappear. I waited until dawn. Only then did I move the dresser away from the door. I left the room trembling. The basilica was silent, apparently empty, but something had changed. I could feel it. I went to the main nave. Everything seemed normal. Pews in line, clean altar, dim light coming through the stained glass windows. But when I looked at the confessional, it was open. I was absolutely certain I had locked the door before leaving, absolutely certain. Now it was wide open, like an invitation. I celebrated Mass that morning, or I tried to. There were only 3 people, an elderly couple, a man in a suit. I began the liturgy, but the words came out strangely, distorted, as if my own voice didn't belong to me. In the midst of the consecration, I felt something, a presence, behind me. I turned my head slowly. There was someone kneeling on the last bench, a figure, motionless, with its back to me. Dark clothes, head down. Nobody had come in. I would have heard. I blinked. The figure disappeared. I dropped the host. My hands were trembling. The elderly couple exchanged uncomfortable glances. The man in the suit stood up and left. I finished Mass in a hurry. I could barely concentrate. In the afternoon, I tried to pray. I went to the side chapel and knelt before an image of Saint Sebastian. I closed my eyes. I clasped my hands. Our Father, who art in heaven. But when I opened my eyes, someone was kneeling beside me. I turned my head slowly. It was him. Father Elias, or what was left of it. Pale skin, sunken eyes, old, torn, stained clothes. He didn't move. He just stared ahead, as if he were praying too. I couldn't breathe. He turned his head, slowly. Our eyes met, and he smiled, a sad smile. Desperate. You opened it. Now you need to listen to me. I jumped up. I ran. I didn't look back. I went looking for Donna Irene. I was desperate. I saw him. I saw Father Elias. He's here. He is... I know. She cut me off, her voice firm. I know he's here. So why is nobody doing anything? Why is nobody? Because he doesn't want to leave, Father Lucas. He wants something. What? She looked at me with pity, forgiveness. That night, I didn't try to sleep. I stayed in my room, sitting on the bed, with the Bible open in my lap, trying to find strength in words that seemed increasingly distant. And then, I heard it. It wasn't footsteps. It was a voice, clear, coming from inside the room. I don't want to hurt you. I looked around. Nothing. I just want to be heard. Then speak. My voice came out firm, but my body trembled. Tell me what you want. Silence. And then, very slowly, the closet door opened. Inside, reflected in the fogged mirror, he was there, Father Elias, standing, behind me, gray, nothing. I looked in the mirror again. He was still there, looking at me. I did terrible things, in the name of God. Her voice was filled with pain. And when I realized it, it was already too late. Tears streamed down her translucent face. They locked me up, and nobody listened to me. Nobody forgave me. I swallowed hard. And now, he approached, not physically, but in his reflection, closer and closer. Now, you need to do what they didn't do. What? He placed his hand on the glass. On the other side, to confess, I spent the entire night awake. Not because I was afraid, but because finally, I understood. Father Elias didn't want to frighten me. He wanted what every sinner wants, what every human being carries in their heart when they err deeply. Forgiveness. And I was the only person who could give him that. The next morning, I went down to the side aisle. The confessional was still open, waiting. Mrs. Irene was cleaning the benches. When she saw me, she stopped. You're going to do it, aren't you? Absent. He needs it. And you? Her voice was low, worried. Do you know what might happen? No. I took a deep breath. But if I don't, he'll never rest. And I'll never be able to live with myself. She looked at me for a long moment. And then, for the first time since I arrived, she smiled, sad, but genuine. Father Augusto would be proud. I went into the confessional. The smell of mold was suffocating. The wood creaked under my weight. I sat next to the confessor, the side where I was supposed to listen. But this time, I was on the other side of the fence. I closed my eyes. I clasped my hands. Father Elias, if you can hear me, I am here. I am ready to listen to you. Silence. And then, I felt the air change. It got cold. So cold that my breath turned into a mist. On the other side of the fence, I heard movement. Someone sitting down. I opened my eyes. Through the cracks in the grate, I saw a silhouette. Father Elias. He was there. Real. Present. Thanks. Her voice was weak, broken. Thank you for listening. Tell me. My voice trembled, but it was firm. Tell me what you did. He took a deep breath, as if gathering his strength. I believed that I could hear God, that he spoke to me in ways that no one else understood. I began to preach my own truths, to question doctrine, to challenge authority. He paused. And when they confronted me, I didn't back down. I called them blind, hypocrites. I said they were afraid of the truth. Her voice grew lower, more painful. But the truth is, I was wrong. I wasn't listening to God. I was listening to my own pride, my own arrogance, and they locked you in here. Yes, as punishment, as penance. They said that when I admitted my mistake, they would release me. He sobbed, a deep, guttural sound, But when I finally understood, when I finally asked for forgiveness, it was too late. I was alone, locked up, screaming, and nobody heard me. I felt tears streaming down my face. I died here, Father Lucas, alone, without forgiveness, without peace. I reached out, through the bars, slowly, and I felt something touch my palm, cold, but real. Those were his fingers. Father Elias, my voice came out firm. I hear your confession. I recognize your repentance, and in the name of God, I forgive you. He squeezed my hand, hard, desperately. Thank you. Thank you. And then, he let go. The cold weather has stopped. The weight in the air disappeared. I looked through the bars. He wasn't there anymore. I left the confessional, breathing heavily, relieved. I looked at Donna Irene. She was standing a few meters away. Her eyes were wide. "It's over," I said. "He has rested." She didn't answer. He just stared at me, with a strange expression. Fear. Donna Irene. She took a step back. "Father, look at the ground." I looked, and I felt my blood freeze. On the dusty floor of the spaceship, there were footprints. My footprints. Leaving the confessional. Walking to where I was. And then, disappearing. That was 3 weeks ago. Since then, things have changed. I still celebrate Mass. I still sleep in the same room. I still live my routine. But sometimes, I forget things. I forget what I was doing, where I was going. Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night, and I'm standing in front of the confessional. I can't remember how I got there. And when I look in the mirror, sometimes, for a brief moment, I see two reflections, my and his. I'm recording this while I can still remember. If you find this message, please believe every word. Some acts of forgiveness cost more than we imagine, and some doors should never be opened, because when you set free a trapped soul, sometimes she doesn't go away on her own. Something happened to me, and to this day I can't understand it. My name doesn't matter. What matters is that I spent 3 years at St. Augustine Seminary in the mountains of upstate New York. 3 years trying to find God. 3 years sleeping poorly. 3 years listening to the silence of that place, and realizing that it was never truly silence. I was 28 when I entered. Existential crisis, recent divorce, a feeling of emptiness that I thought faith could fill. The seminary was old, built in 1890, gray stone, tall, narrow windows, corridors that seemed never to end. In winter, the wind howled through the trees like something wounded. The insomnia started in the second week. I would wake up at 3 in the morning, every day, for no reason. I would just wake up, and I would lie there, on the thin mattress, listening to the creaking of the wood, the breathing of the other seminarians in the rooms next door, the distant ticking of a clock I could never locate. It was on one of those nights that I heard it for the first time. About the room. There were 6 of us novices that year. During dinner, one of them, Marcus, a thin guy with round glasses and trembling hands, mentioned something. He was speaking softly, almost whispering, but I caught the end of the sentence. "No one has gone in there for 40 years. I looked at him. He looked away. "Where?" I asked. Silence. "Marcus." "Where?" He took a deep breath, looked around as if he were breaking some vow. "The prayer room in the basement, East Wing, locked since 1983. I laughed. I didn't believe it. "Why?" He didn't answer. He just got up and left. But another seminarian, older, a certain Father Benedict, gray hair, deep-set eyes, leaned toward me and said, in a hoarse voice, because the last group that prayed there heard something. Did you hear what? He stared at me for a long second. Something that responded. I should have let it go. I should have forgotten. But the insomnia worsened. And the longer I stayed awake, the more I thought about that room. Where was it? Why lock up a prayer room? What could be so terrible about an empty room? I spent days trying to find out. I searched the seminary library archives. Nothing. I discreetly asked the older priests. They changed the subject, until I finally found something. A local newspaper from 1983, dusty microfilm, almost illegible. The headline read, "Tragedy at Seminary. 3 seminarians hospitalized after incident during prayer session." The article was vague. It spoke of collective nervous breakdown, disturbing experiences, and ongoing ecclesiastical investigation. No names, no details, just one line at the end. The room was sealed off on the bishop's orders. Lettuce, not locked, sealed. I needed to see it. It took me 2 weeks to find the key. It was hanging on a wooden frame in the sacristy, among dozens of other rusty keys. They all had labels, except one. I knew which one it was. In the early hours of a Thursday morning, at 2:47 a.m., I got up. I put on my black cassock, slipped on my old, quiet shoes, and left the room. The hallway was dark. Only the red light of the emergency exit flickered in the distance. I walked slowly, leaning against the cold wall, feeling my heart pounding too hard. The East Wing was off limits. Not officially, but everyone knew. Disused wing, they said. Structural problems. Lie. When I got to the door, I smelled it. Mold, old wood, and something else. Something sweet, nauseating, like dead flowers. The door was made of solid oak, with an old iron latch. I put the key in the lock. My hand was trembling. Gray. The click was too loud in the silence. I pushed, and the door opened. The air that came out from inside was freezing. Not cold, freezing. It was as if the room had been trapped in the winter of 1983 and had never warmed up again. I turned on my phone's flashlight. The beam of light cut through the darkness and revealed nothing, just shapes covered by dusty white sheets, silhouettes of furniture, long shadows on the stone walls. I took a step inside. The door creaked behind me, but didn't close. I left it ajar, just in case. The floor was dark, stained wood. There were footprints in the dust, many old footprints, as if dozens of people had come and gone running, but they all pointed inward. None pointed outward. My stomach tightened. I turned the lights around. The room was bigger than I expected. Rectangular, with a high ceiling of wooden beams. On the walls, iron crucifixes. But all of them, upside down. Upside down. Not fallen. Turned over. As if someone had removed each one, rotated them 180 degrees, and nailed them back on. What the hell? I muttered. My voice sounded strange, muffled, as if the room had swallowed it whole. I walked to the center. There were wooden benches, 6 of them, but they weren't lined up facing an altar. They were all facing the back wall, as if whatever was being worshipped wasn't right in the forefront. I was behind. I approached the benches. The wood was scratched, deeply, nail marks, long, desperate, as if someone had tried to hold on, to grab onto something while being pulled. Pulled to where? I lit up the floor under the benches. Dark stains, not blood. Something denser. Tar? Ink? No. It had an organic texture, as if it had sprouted from the ground. My heart raced. I should have left. I know that now. But something inside me, something curious, something stupid, made me stay. I walked to the back wall. There was an inscription, engraved in the stone, irregular letters, made by hand, perhaps with a knife. Don't listen, don't answer, don't look. My breath caught in my throat. Below, another line, smaller, almost erased. She's always listening. I received it. The flashlight trembled in my hand. That's when I heard. At first, I thought it was the wind, a low moan, coming from somewhere undefined. But no, it wasn't wind. It was a voice, or several, overlapping, whispering something. I froze. I tried to pinpoint the source. Was it coming from above? From the walls? From inside the room? No. It came from everywhere at once. And then I realized they weren't English words, not even in Latin, not in any language I knew. It was a prayer, I was sure of it. The cadence, the repetition, the forced reverence in the intonation. It was a prayer. But the words were wrong, too long, guttural, as if human languages weren't made to pronounce them. My skin crawled. I'll turn around to leave, but the door was locked. No, I whispered. I hadn't closed the door. I'd left it ajar. I was sure of it. I ran to her. I pulled the doorknob. Locked. No, no, no. I shook it hard. Nothing. The key was on the outside. I'd left it in the lock as a precaution. Idiot. The sound got louder. Now it was taller, brighter, and it was coming from behind me. I turned around slowly. The banks were still there, the real estate, but now there was something different. A shadow, in the corner, where there was nothing before. It wasn't illuminated by any light. It simply was there, vertical, thin, too tall to be human, and it was moving, not walking, crescendo, as if it were unfolding, opening up, revealing itself. I pressed my back against the door. Please, I whispered. Please, I just wanted to see. I didn't want to. The shadow stopped. And then, for the first time since I joined, there was absolute silence. But it was no relief. It was expected, as if something were waiting. Waiting for me to do the one thing I shouldn't. To speak. Responder. Pray back. I don't know how long I stood there, frozen, my back against the door. Seconds, minutes. The silence was so dense I could hear my own blood pulsing in my ears. My breath came out in short, rapid gasps, too hot in the frigid air. The shadow continued, stopped. I didn't sing. But now I noticed the details. It wasn't flat. It had depth, like a hole in reality, a three-dimensional void. And inside it, there was movement, things twisting, undulating, like worms under the skin. I closed my eyes tightly. It's not real. It's not real. You're tired. You haven't slept properly in weeks. This is a hallucination, sleep deprivation. This isn't... The sound is back. But now, it was closer, right behind me, on the other side of the door. I turned around abruptly and pressed my ear against the wood. The voice, or voices, continued. That impossible prayer. But now I could feel the vibration. It went through the door. It went through the wall. It went through my skull. And then I realized something terrifying. The voice did not come from outside. She was everywhere, on the walls, on the ceiling, on the floor. The entire room was praying. I stepped back to the center, turning the flashlight in every direction. The flickering light illuminated the pews, the inverted crucifixes, the stains on the floor. And that's when I saw it. Nail marks. They weren't just in the banks. They were on the walls, everywhere. Hundreds of them. Deep, desperate scratches, climbing up the rocks as if someone had tried to scale them, to escape, to climb away from something. My mouth went dry. I lit the floor again, and this time, I saw what I hadn't seen before. The dark spots were not random. They formed a pattern, a circle. I was inside it. No. My voice came out hoarse, almost inaudible. I took a step back. My foot hit something. I looked down. A Bible. Old, torn, open on the floor. The pages were burned at the edges, and in the middle, handwritten in red ink, or something that looked like ink, were words scribbled in despair. She is inside the prayer. Don't finish the sentence. If you hear your name, do not answer. My stomach churned. I picked up the Bible with trembling hands and turned more pages, more notes, disjointed sentences, some in English, others in Latin, others scribbled, illegible, as if whoever wrote them had lost their mind mid-sentence. One of them said, "We thought we were praying to God, but God wasn't listening." Below, something else was there. I dropped the Bible. It fell with a dry thud, and the sound stopped. Again. That heavy silence, suffocating. But this time, I felt it. Something was watching me, not the shadow in the corner, not the walls, not the ceiling. Something inside the room, something that has always been there. And now, I was awake. I turned around slowly. The shadow had moved. Now it was closer, much closer, in the middle of the room, between me and the door, and for the first time, I saw a shape, not human, but not completely alien. She had a suggestion of a figure, arms too long, legs bent at the wrong angles, a tilted head, as if listening to something in the distance, or worse, as if he were waiting. My throat closed up. I couldn't move. And then, I heard my name, not coming from the shadows, coming from inside my head, pronounced perfectly, with the voice of someone I knew, my own voice. "You came." I covered my ears with my hands. I squeezed them tightly. No. This isn't real. This isn't real. But the voice continued. Calm. Soft. Too familiar. You always wanted to hear it. Now, listen. And the prayer returned. But this time, I understood. Not the words, but the meaning. She was calling me, inviting me, asking me to answer, asking me to join. And the worst part, the worst of all, that's what a part of me wanted. A small, deep, sick part. I wanted to open my mouth and repeat those impossible words. My lips began to move. "No," I groaned. "No." But my mouth was making sounds. Sounds that I didn't recognize. Sounds that shouldn't come from a human throat. I bit my tongue hard. I tasted blood. The pain brought me back. I ran to the door. I banged on it. I yelled, "Someone, please, get me out of here!" Nothing. Only the sound of that damned prayer, louder and louder, deeper and deeper inside me. And then, the door opened. Alone, slowly, grinding, revealing the dark corridor on the other side. I didn't think. I just ran. I staggered out, stumbling, falling to my knees on the cold stone floor. The door slammed shut behind me with a dull bang, and everything fell silent, but I could still hear it, inside my head, that prayer, whispering, waiting. If this made you uncomfortable, wait for the next chapter. I didn't go back to my room. I stayed there, in the hallway, on my knees, trying to breathe. My body was trembling. Cold sweat trickled down my forehead. I had bitten my tongue so hard that the taste of iron still filled my mouth. But the worst part was the sound. He hadn't stopped, even with the door closed, even far from the room. I could still hear that prayer, softly, constantly, like a hum behind my thoughts. "It will pass," I whispered to myself. "It will pass. You just need to forget. You need to sleep." But I knew, deep down, I knew that wasn't going to pass. In the following days, I tried to act normal. I would wake up. I would attend Mass. I would study. I would pray. But I couldn't concentrate. During prayers, I would close my eyes and listen to that voice. those impossible words mingling with the Psalms, as if they were waiting for me to make a mistake, to say the wrong thing, that I should complete their prayer. At night, the insomnia worsened. I would lie down and stare at the ceiling, feeling the weight of something invisible pressing against my chest, as if someone was sitting on top of me, watching. Sometimes I would turn to the side and see shadows in the corner of the room, stops, waiting. I turned on the light. They disappeared, but I felt they were still there, just hidden. It was on the 5th day that things changed. I was in the library, trying to read. When Marcus approached, he was pale, thinner. His eyes were sunken, with dark purple circles. "You went in there, didn't you?" he whispered. I froze. "What are you talking about?" He sat down next to me, looking around as if he were afraid of being overheard. "In the room. You came in. I know. I can feel it. Marcus, I don't lie." He cut me off, his voice trembling. "I went in too, 3 years ago. And ever since then, ever since she hasn't left me alone." My blood ran cold. "Does she?" Marcus closed his eyes. A tear rolled down his face. The thing that lives in prayer. The thing that the seminarians of 1983 awakened. They thought they were calling on God, but they called on something else. Something ancient. Something that was waiting. I swallowed hard. What happened to them? Marcus opened his eyes, and what I saw there, pure fear. 2 killed themselves, 1 disappeared. The 4th, he's still alive, but he doesn't speak. He just sits in a psychiatric hospital in Albany, staring at the wall, always the same wall, as if he were seeing something that nobody else sees. He gripped my arm tightly. "She marks the people who enter, and when you're marked, she doesn't stop. She waits, inside your head, inside your prayers, until you give in." "Give up what?" My voice came out hoarse. Marcus stood up. His hands were trembling. "Until you finish the prayer." And he left. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, trying not to think. But it was impossible. The voice was there, always there, whispering, repeating, waiting. And then, I heard footsteps. No broker. Slow. Dragging. They stopped at my door. I held my breath. The doorknob turned. Slowly. The door opened. There was no one on the other side. Just the dark hallway. But I felt it. Something had gotten in. The temperature dropped. My breath came out in a mist. I sat up in bed, pulling the sheets up to my chest as if that would protect me. And then I saw, in the corner of the room, in the shade, that same shadow from the room. But now, it had form. Long arms, bent legs, tilted head. And he was looking at me. He had no eyes, but I could feel his gaze, drilling, dissecting, getting to know every part of myself. "Get out of here," I whispered. "Please, get out of here." She didn't move. But the voice returned, inside my head, my own voice, but distorted, wet, as if she was speaking underwater. "You heard us. Now, we hear you." My heart raced. I didn't say anything. I didn't say anything. The shadow leaned forward, and for the first time, she smiled. It had no mouth, but I saw it, I felt it, the smile. You don't need to speak to pray. And then I understood. Every thought, every word I repeated mentally during Mass, every prayer I murmured softly when I was alone. She was listening, all, waiting for me to say the wrong word, the wrong tone, the wrong intention. I'm waiting for me to finish the prayer they started in 1983. No. Tears streamed down my face. I won't.
I won't do it.
The shadow drew closer. 1 step, 2. Now it was beside the bed, leaning over me, and he whispered, so close that I felt the cold burn my skin.
You've already started.
I woke up screaming, sunlight streaming in through the window, gasping for breath. I looked around. The room was empty, but in the mirror, there was something written with my finger on the condensation that shouldn't be there. 3 words. Don't end it. I ran out of the room. I went down the stairs. I crossed the refectory. I arrived at the chapel. I needed to pray. I needed to ask for help. I needed to find some kind of answer. I knelt before the altar. I clasped my hands together. I closed my eyes, and I began. Our Father, who art in heaven. But the words came out wrong. Not in Portuguese. In that language. That impossible language. I covered my mouth with my hands. But it was too late. I had completed the first sentence. And there, at the back of the chapel, the door to the prayer room, I was certain I was locked in. It was open, and something was coming out. I ran. I don't know where. I just ran. I stumbled out of the chapel, pushing the wooden doors so hard they slammed against the walls. The echo reverberated through the empty hallway like a gunshot. My bare feet slipped on the cold stone floor. I almost fell, but I held onto the wall, breathless, my heart pounding in my chest. I looked back. The door to the room was still open, and from the darkness inside, something was moving. Not fast, not desperate, slowly, confidently, as if he knew I had nowhere to go. I locked my bedroom door. I pushed the dresser against it. I turned off the lights. I hid under the bed like a child, and I waited. Hours, or maybe minutes. Time had lost its meaning. All I knew was that that thing, that presence, was closer now. I could feel it, in the air, in the silence, in the way the shadows moved in the corner of the room. And then, I heard the knock. At the door, 3 times, paused, deliberate. Talk, talk, talk. I covered my mouth so I wouldn't scream. Who's there? I shouted, my voice choked with emotion. Silence. And then, an answer. My own voice, from the other side of the door. You know who I am. Tears burned my eyes. Go away, please. I didn't finish the prayer. I stopped. Rice. Low. Distorted. Like glass being dragged across metal. You don't have to finish. You've already opened the door. And now, I can come in. The doorknob began to turn. Slowly. I saw the dresser move. By itself. Sliding across the floor as if it weighed nothing. No, I sobbed. No, no, no. The door opened. And there it was. In the shade, but now. She had my face, my eyes, my mouth, my smile, but wrong, completely wrong. Her eyes were too deep, her mouth opened at an impossible angle, and behind her, inside her, I saw things moving. She entered the room. Each step made the floor creak. Each movement distorted the air around her. What do you want from me? I shouted. She leaned down. She was at my height. She stared at me, and he whispered, I don't want anything. You called me. You opened the room. You heard the prayer. And now, you are mine. I closed my eyes tightly. This isn't real. This isn't real. This isn't... I felt icy fingers touching my face. I opened my eyes. She was inches from me. And then, she smiled. You're going to leave here. You're going to go back to your life. You're going to pretend nothing happened. But every time you pray, every time you close your eyes, every time the silence is too profound. She moved closer until I felt her icy breath on my ear. I'll be there. I left the seminary a week later. I didn't say goodbye to anyone. I just grabbed my things and left. The priests asked what had happened. I said I had lost my calling, that God wasn't calling me. Lie. I left because I knew that if I stayed another day, I would be back in that room, and that would be the end of the prayer. Today I live in Albany. I work in an office. Ordinary life. Quiet. But I'm not sleeping well, because every night, when I close my eyes, I hear that prayer, those impossible words, and sometimes, when I wake up in the middle of the night, I see, in the corner of the room, in the shade, waiting. I've never told anyone this. I've never sought help, because I know there isn't any. Marcus hanged himself 2 months after I left. They found him in the dormitory, eyes open, mouth slightly open, as if he were whispering something, and Father Benedict disappeared. They say he went back to the room, alone, in the middle of the night. He was never seen again. Sometimes I think about going back to finish what I started, just to stop this sound from going off inside my head. But I know what will happen if I do that. I know what she wants, not my soul, not my life. She wants me to bring others. Let me tell this story. Let me plant the seeds of curiosity, of doubt, that I make someone want to know what's in the locked prayer room. And now you know. You heard. What if one day you feel something calling you? Something whispering inside your head. Something that sounds like a prayer you never learned. Don't answer. Don't listen. Do not complete. Because she's always listening. What if you give her what she wants? You will never be alone again. I know that. Because ever since that night, I was never there again. If you listen to the end, you're already one of us. Subscribe so you don't miss the next whisper.